the thing that surprises me, and when I look back to those days, it was all kind of me and my team had to try and navigate our way through it. There was no real guidance as to say, well, this is how you need to train post-pregnancy in this stage, and this is what you need to do. It was all like trial and error. And I feel that there's a real lack of, support for not just athletes who decide to start having their children during their career and how to get back, but also just for female athletes in general, just to understand like their physiology as women and how to, tinker with or change elements of their training and the way they compete to get the best out of themselves. It's still very much just an area that's underserved.
What needs to be explored?
I think the conversation needs to be had more. So I think now I see more female athletes talking more openly. There's definitely more athletes coming back and having children. There's Alison Felix, Serena Williams. There's more athletes that are doing it and speaking about how they've done it. I think that helps the conversation. But then I think more needs to be done in a way of what do federations offer athletes from testing, hormonal testing, data, research and funding. There needs to be more funding put into, the kind of hormonal, physiological understanding of female athletes.
Because it's, and when I was speaking to Jane on Friday, she said when she was working with Kaylee Holmes, she got towards the end of her career and it took that long to find out that Kaylee, I can't remember what it was, but she'd gone through her entire career.
Yeah. I think she had endometriosis. Yeah.
And that seems incredible based on the amount of medical exposure, I guess, you have.
Yeah, I think that the biggest problem is just the lack of funding and the lack of research that's done into that area of women's health. And I think with the lack of funding, then there's a lack of research, then there's not the backing to say, well, look, this is what we see here happening. There's just, a few papers done and it doesn't have the leverage that it ought to. So it's just this continuous cycle.
But if we kind of talk about funding, I'm just offering the commentary from a venture investor. Like the most successful women's data app of any kind really would be one of the leading kind of fertility tracking apps, whether it be a Cycles or any of them. And I think one is at 80 million ARR, which if you applied a 8 to 10x multiple on a public company, it's 700 million. The leader is a $700 million company, potentially, if valued well in a good day. That's not a business that venture can put money behind. But I don't mean it badly, but it's like, we need proof that these can be mega businesses before the money comes. And that's why it's not funded.
Again, what we're talking about something that half of the world's population has to, we're not just packaging this into professional sport. Mm-hmm. And what you have done since and talked about, and with Jennis, is basically break down what a woman goes through and how to optimize your life based on a monthly cycle. Yeah. And when you will feel a certain way, when you will be able to be at a better performance. Now, if you apply that, into a product or, in a Whoop type model, that is a huge number of people that you are servicing if you can do that. So surely that is something that
and I think from like a elite sports perspective, it's a relatively small market, but they're the people who are looking for those real marginal gains and would have a massive impact on performance. But then, like you say, the market size isn't huge. But absolutely, 50% of the population are women that go through, our hormones don't just go on this straight line. They're these constant ebbs and flows. And we go through, whether you choose to have children through pregnancy, postnatal, but we're all going through puberty, fertile years, perimenopause and menopause. And, we face like really difficult, side effects and, different situations that aren't really catered for. And it's understanding, well, how can we support more women? Firstly, like to understand like education around their cycles, but then what lifestyle interventions and what platforms can we provide to help them navigate themselves through those?
Because if you understand that data, no, and this is just a discussion. I mean, you may well be right, but is that not someone hasn't created the product yet or the opportunity to actually service this need rather than it's not?
I think it's probably like the only way it works is like if you actually integrate it into a play like Whoop or Aura, where it's like an adjacent product that is a feature in a larger platform play, which then makes sense. But the jury's still very much
because then
out
it's an
on.
acquisition piece, right? So you could create a company, Whoop could then buy that. If you've got some 700 million valuation,
If you're Whoop, you'd then buy that, and so I think that totally works. But then it's an adjacent, it's not a standalone, and it's definitely not a category in its own right.
Yeah.
I think also bluntly more education needs to be provided to men.
Sorry,
and that's why I was asking these questions.
No, definitely. But for not just for men though, for women, and that's half the problem, because actually a lot of women don't even understand the basics of, what they should be tracking, what they should be looking for, and then they're not using, a product to its maximum.